Listen, I need to tell you something about humans that will probably keep you awake for the next 3 sleep cycles. My name is Vex Kohler, and I'm what you might call a diplomatic observer for the Galactic Harmony Council. Yeah, I know, fancy title for someone who basically watches aliens do stupid things and writes reports about it, but this? This was different. This was the kind of stupid that makes you question every decision your species has made for the last 1,000 years. So here's the setup. The Council, in all their infinite wisdom, decided that humanity needed to be, how do they put it, integrated into the galactic community. Right. Because giving a bunch of hairless primates who figured out nuclear fusion before they figured out basic table manners access to the wider galaxy was obviously a brilliant idea. The plan was simple, they said. Give humanity one warship. One single warship. Not a fleet, not a battle cruiser, just one modest vessel to patrol the quiet sectors. You know, the boring parts of space where nothing ever happens except the occasional asteroid mining dispute or drunk Zeltharian crashing into a space station. The ship they chose was the GSV Peacekeeper. A nice, safe, diplomatic vessel. Shields? Sure, but nothing too fancy. Weapons? Just enough to scare off pirates, not enough to level a moon. The perfect training wheels for a species that still solved most of their problems by hitting things with rocks. Commander Elena Vasquez was their choice to captain this floating daycare center. Now, I'd met Vasquez before during the preliminary negotiations, and let me tell you, this woman had the kind of smile that made you check your pockets afterward. But the Council? They saw her service record, all those peace negotiations and humanitarian missions, and thought, perfect. A diplomat with military experience. What they failed to notice was that most of those peace negotiations ended with someone's fleet scattered across 3 star systems. The handover ceremony was a thing of beauty, if you enjoy watching bureaucrats pat themselves on the back while completely missing the point. High Admiral Zeth-9 of the Trilaxian Navy stood there, all 4 arms crossed, trying to look dignified while explaining basic ship operations to creatures that figured out faster-than-light travel by accident. The weapons systems are locked to defensive protocols only, Zeth-9 intoned, his voice carrying that special kind of condescension reserved for explaining fire safety to children. The navigation computer has pre-approved routes to ensure you remain in designated sectors. And the communications array will keep you in constant contact with Council oversight. Vasquez nodded along, asking all the right questions about crew quarters and supply schedules. But I caught that look in her eyes. The same look a predator gets when it's pretending to be asleep while watching prey wander closer. Any questions about your patrol assignments? Zeth-9 asked, probably thinking he was being thorough. Just one, Vasquez replied, that dangerous smile spreading across her face. What's the response time for backup if we encounter something unexpected? Unexpected? Zeth-9's crest feathers ruffled slightly. Commander, you'll be patrolling Sector 7 Delta. The most exciting thing that happens there is the annual migration of gas whales through the nebula of tranquil thoughts. Oh, if only he knew. The ceremony concluded with the traditional exchange of ceremonial weapons, which humans apparently collect like trophies, and the Peacekeeper was officially transferred to human command. The crew boarding was interesting. Instead of the expected mixture of diplomats and scientists, Vasquez had somehow assembled what looked like a collection of misfits who'd been kicked out of every respectable military organization in human space. Her first officer was Lieutenant Marcus Webb, a man who'd apparently been court-martialed twice for creative interpretation of orders. The tactical officer, Sarah Vega, had a reputation for turning defensive maneuvers into offensive strikes. And their engineer, Dr. James Liu, had been banned from 3 different research stations for unauthorized modifications to critical systems. But here's where it gets interesting. 3 days. 3 whole days the Peacekeeper spent in Sector 7 Delta, dutifully following their patrol routes and filing proper reports. The Council was practically glowing with pride. See, they said. Humans can follow simple instructions after all. Then the distress signal came in that it wasn't from their sector. It wasn't even from their quadrant. The signal originated from the Corvin disputed zone, a lovely little corner of space where 3 different species had been trying to murder each other for the better part of a century. The kind of place where diplomats go to die and warships go to become very expensive scrap metal. The signal was from the SCIFI refugee convoy, trapped between a Corvin battle fleet and a Nexari assault group. Civilian ships, families, children. All about to become collateral damage in someone else's war. Now, any sensible species would have forwarded the distress call to the appropriate authorities and continued their patrol. The Council had response protocols for situations like this. Proper channels, committee reviews, impact assessments. You know, civilized things. Vasquez listened to the distress call once. Just once. Then she turned to her tactical officer with that smile that probably made admirals wake up in cold sweats. Sarah, how long would it take to reach the Corvin zone at maximum burn? 18 hours if we push the engines past Redline, Vega replied without hesitation. But Commander, we're not authorized to leave our sector, and the disputed zone is specifically off-limits to Council vessels. Vasquez tapped her fingers on the armrest of her captain's chair, a sound that somehow managed to be more ominous than a dozen battle klaxons. Dr. Liu, what kind of modifications can you make to our defensive systems in 18 hours? The engineer's grin was visible from across the bridge. Well, technically, if I route power from the secondary generators through the shield matrix, I could boost our defensive capabilities by about 300%. Might cause some interesting side effects with the weapons array, though. What kind of side effects? The kind that turn defensive pulse cannons into something significantly less defensive. Webb, the first officer, cleared his throat. Commander, I feel obligated to point out that engaging hostile forces in the disputed zone would be a direct violation of our patrol orders. Vasquez's smile widened. Marcus, did the Council specifically order us not to respond to distress calls? Well, no, but, and isn't our primary mission to maintain peace and stability in our assigned region? Technically, yes, but the disputed zone isn't a refugee convoy from our patrol sector requested assistance. They just happen to currently be located outside our immediate area. Her tone was so innocent it could have fooled a celestial monk. We're simply extending our patrol boundaries to ensure the safety of ships under our protection. The bridge went quiet for a moment. Then Webb started laughing. Not the polite chuckle of someone who heard a mildly amusing joke, but the kind of laughter that suggested he was witnessing something beautiful and terrible at the same time. You magnificent lunatic, he said, shaking his head. The Council is going to have our heads for this. Only if they find out before we save a few thousand innocent lives, Vasquez replied, settling back in her chair. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? And that, my fellow beings, is why you should never, ever give humans a warship and expect them to color inside the lines. Because while every other species in the galaxy sees boundaries, humans see suggestions. Where we see impossible odds, they see interesting challenges. And where we see certain death, they see Tuesday afternoon entertainment. The Peacekeeper's engines roared to life, and the ship that was supposed to be patrolling the galactic equivalent of a retirement community set course for one of the most dangerous war zones in known space. That I should have known right then that the galaxy was about to get a very expensive lesson in why humans don't make good pets. But the real fun was just beginning. So there I was, frantically filing emergency reports while tracking the Peacekeeper's completely unauthorized sprint toward the Corvin disputed zone. My supervisors were having what humans might call a collective nervous breakdown, which is apparently what happens when bureaucrats realize they've accidentally handed a loaded plasma rifle to a toddler. The Peacekeeper dropped out of hyperspace right in the middle of what can only be described as a three-way galactic demolition derby. The Corvin battle fleet, 12 ships strong, had formed a blockade around the SCIFI refugee convoy. Meanwhile, 8 Nexari assault vessels were positioning themselves for what they probably called a tactical intervention, and what everyone else called mass murder with extra steps. Both fleets immediately turned their sensors toward the new arrival. I imagine the confusion was palpable. Here comes this single, modest council vessel, broadcasting diplomatic codes, sailing straight into a battlefield like it was attending a garden party. The Corvan admiral, a charming fellow named Gextorval who collected ears from defeated enemies, opened communications first. His translator struggled with what I can only assume was some very colorful language before settling on, "Unknown council vessel, you are in violation of the disputed zone treaty. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Commander Vasquez responded with the kind of calm that makes smart people start looking for exits. "Admiral Gextorval, this is Commander Elena Vasquez of the GSV Peacekeeper. I'm here to escort the Cien refugee convoy to safety. I suggest you allow them to pass." The silence that followed was probably audible across 3 star systems. Then Gextorval started laughing. Not the polite diplomatic chuckle you hear at council meetings, but the kind of laugh that suggested someone had just told him the funniest joke in galactic history. "Human, you pilot 1 ship against my fleet of 12. Are your species naturally suicidal, or is this stupidity a learned behavior?" "Actually," Vasquez replied, and I swear I could hear her smile through the comm channel, "we prefer to think of it as optimism. Dr. Liu, are those modifications ready?" "Just finished the final calibrations, Commander. Our defensive systems are now operating at 400% normal capacity." "Excellent. And the side effects you mentioned?" "Well, technically, our pulse cannons are still classified as defensive weapons. They just defend really aggressively now." The Nexary commander, apparently not wanting to be left out of what was shaping up to be the galaxy's most expensive comedy show, cut into the conversation. "Corvan scum, you will not claim these refugees before we do. And human, your interference will be remembered when we add your species to our collection." "My collection?" Webb's voice crackled over the comm. "Commander, I think they're threatening to collect us." "How thoughtful," Vasquez replied. "Sarah, can you show our new friends what we think of collectors?" What happened next violated approximately 17 different laws of physics and at least 43 galactic warfare conventions. The Peacekeeper's defensive pulse cannons, now running on enough power to light up a small moon, opened fire simultaneously on both fleets. But here's the thing about humans that nobody in the council bothered to study: they don't just break rules, they rewrite them entirely. Instead of targeting the obvious military assets, Vasquez ordered precision strikes on engine systems and communication arrays. Not to destroy the ships, mind you, but to cripple them. Within 30 seconds, half the Corvan fleet was dead in space, spinning helplessly as their navigation systems rebooted. The Nexary fared even worse, their assault ships suddenly unable to coordinate attacks as their communication networks went dark. "Fascinating," Dr. Liu's voice came over the bridge comm. "It appears our defensive modifications have created some unexpected tactical advantages." The refugee convoy, meanwhile, was moving fast. The Cien ships, originally huddled together like frightened children, suddenly broke formation and began racing toward the edge of the combat zone. Apparently, they'd been waiting for exactly this kind of distraction. Admiral Gextorval, his flagship spinning slowly due to a conveniently placed engine malfunction, managed to restore communications just long enough to scream something that the translator diplomatically rendered as, "This is impossible. Your weapons should not be capable of such precision." "You're absolutely right," Vasquez agreed cheerfully. "They shouldn't be. Marcus, remind me to commend Dr. Liu for his creative engineering." But the Corvan weren't done yet. 3 of their ships still had partial engine control, and they were moving to intercept the fleeing refugees. Standard military doctrine would call for the Peacekeeper to engage these ships directly, probably resulting in mutual destruction. Humans, as I was learning, don't really care about standard doctrine. "Sarah, can you calculate a ramming course for the lead Corvan interceptor?" "Commander, ramming maneuvers are generally considered suicidal. Only if you actually ram them. I'm thinking more of a game of galactic chicken." The Peacekeeper suddenly accelerated toward the lead Corvan ship, engines screaming as they pushed past every safety protocol the Council engineers had installed. To any outside observer, it looked like a kamikaze run. Pure, undiluted human insanity, the Corvin captain, faced with a rapidly approaching human vessel that showed no signs of changing course, did what any rational being would do: he blinked first. His ship veered away from the refugee convoy just as the peacekeeper swept past, close enough that their shields actually sparked against each other. "One down," Webb reported, probably trying very hard not to laugh. "Two more interceptors closing on the convoy." "Time for Plan B," Vasquez announced. "We had a Plan A?" Sarah asked. Plan A was not getting everyone killed in the first 5 minutes. Plan B is significantly more entertaining. The peacekeepers' next maneuver would have made physics professors across the galaxy weep openly. Using their overpowered shields as makeshift battering rams, they began hurting the remaining Corvin ships like a sheepdog working with particularly stubborn livestock. Every time a Corvin vessel tried to break toward the refugees, the peacekeeper would suddenly appear in their path, shields blazing, forcing them to choose between collision and compliance. Meanwhile, the Nexari were dealing with their own problems. Apparently, losing communication in the middle of a coordinated assault tends to make fleets very confused very quickly. Their ships were essentially flying in circles, trying to establish contact with each other while avoiding the occasional warning shot from the peacekeepers' impossibly overpowered weapons. The refugee convoy reached the edge of the combat zone just as both hostile fleets managed to restore partial functionality to their systems. But by then, it was too late. The Sien ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying thousands of civilians to safety. The aftermath was awkward. 20 alien warships, representing two of the galaxy's most feared military forces, floating helplessly in space while a single human vessel sat among them like a teacher supervising detention. The silence was broken only by the occasional spark from damaged systems and what I'm pretty sure was Admiral Gextorval crying. "Well," Commander Vasquez announced over an open channel that every ship in the system could hear, "that was educational. Admiral Gextorval, Commander Nexus Val, I trust you both learned something valuable about the importance of protecting civilian populations. This is not over, human," Gextorval managed to spit out through his tears and what sounded like considerable pain. "The Corvin Empire will remember this insult." "Oh, I'm counting on it," Vasquez replied with that terrifying cheerfulness that was becoming her trademark. "In fact, I'd like to extend an invitation to both your fleets. The Peacekeeper will be patrolling this sector regularly now. Please feel free to engage in any future aggressive actions against civilian populations. We do so enjoy the target practice." The Peacekeeper turned and began its journey back to Sector 7 Delta, leaving behind 20 disabled warships, 2 very confused military commanders, and what would become the most discussed engagement in modern galactic history. As I filed my final report on the incident, I realized the Council had made a fundamental error in judgment. They'd assumed that giving humans one ship would limit their ability to cause trouble. What they'd actually done was provide a single point of focus for humanity's most dangerous trait, their complete inability to accept that something is impossible. The Sien refugees reached Council space safely. The Corvin and Nexari fleets eventually limped home to explain to their superiors how they'd been humiliated by a single diplomatic vessel. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species began asking very pointed questions about exactly what kind of peaceful patrol ship could do what the Peacekeeper had just done. But the most terrifying part. Commander Vasquez filed her mission report under Routine Patrol Activities. Apparently, turning a 3-way battle into a one-sided demolition while saving thousands of lives qualified as just another Tuesday for humans. The Council, in their infinite wisdom, decided that perhaps humanity's patrol sector could be expanded. Just a little. After all, what's the worst that could happen? I submitted my resignation the next day. Some things are too dangerous to observe up close, and humans with warships definitely qualify. But I heard through unofficial channels that the Peacekeeper's crew received commendations for their creative interpretation of diplomatic protocols. They also received requests from 17 different species asking if humanity might be interested in expanding their patrol routes even further. The galaxy, it seems, has a very short memory when it comes to learning from its mistakes, but humans? Humans remember everything, especially what works.